see if I can do a video completely unscripted. Hello everyone, I'm Georgia and this is The Sound of Georgia. Today I'm going to be talking about the end of Act 1 in The Sound of Music and how the stage version is different from the screen version. I've mentioned this before, but The Sound of Music went through quite a lot of changes before it became a film. And as such, there are a lot of things about the movie that are very different from the original musical. Obviously, there is a lot of similarity and there's more things that are the same than there are things that are drastically different, but the differences are bigger than probably most film adaptations of musicals. If we want to use the musical I saw last month as an example, the 2004 film of Phantom of the Opera is very similar to its stage counterpart. The chandelier just drops at the end of the film rather than the middle. There's a sword fight for some reason, and the framing device is longer and probably more pointless. But all in all, that's not a lot. Sound of Music is far more different. Not just in the sequence of events, but some of the events in general, and more specifically, I would say, the tone. I'm not an expert, but if I had to put these two into genres, I would say the musical is far more comedy, while the film is far more drama. Because of all the differences, honestly, the musical feels like the first draft in a lot of ways. But the end to Act 1. And I know in films there's not really an Act 1 and Act 2 in the same way there is on stage, even for musicals, but just for simplicity's sake I'm going to be using the phrase Act 1. As I'm sure we all know, the end of Act 1 in the film is Maria quietly leaving the villa during the party. She comes down the stairs with her bag and her guitar case, drops a letter to one of the side tables in the foyer, and slips out the door. On stage, however, we get a few more scenes before intermission, and Act 1 ends with Climb Every Mountain. And honestly, I don't think any one is better than the other, because I think they both work perfectly for that specific version. Having Climb Every Mountain before the intermission on film would not be as powerful as it is on stage, and vice versa. On stage, musicals usually end Act 1 with something big and dramatic. And usually the reason for this is because you are in the same room as the performance. When it comes to the film, you could be watching it on your TV or sitting on the lounge, or in your bed on your computer. And obviously there are times, like if you're going to the sing-along, where it is at the theatre. But a theatre for musicals and a cinema are different, and even then, you're not in the same room. Also, the sing-along is overrated. Things are more big and dramatic than others. The ending of Act 1 of Legally Blonde is not nearly as dramatic as the ending of Act 1 of Phantom, but both of them are far more dramatic than this. Climb Every Mountain, however, is a similar amount of dramatic. So I think they both work perfectly for the story they're trying to tell. I think part of that is just the fact that one is on film and one is on stage, but also because of how different the stories are. For starters, the stage version of Sound of Music is about half an hour shorter than the film. There are a lot of scenes added to the film, particularly in Act 1, that are not there in the original musical, and for the most part aren't there in current stage versions. I have confidence, the dinner scene, the montage before Do Re Mi, the puppet show, Edelweiss, all of those are scenes that are not in the musical. Now on stage there is obviously How Can Love Survive, but that's the only one that is on stage but not on film. My point is that simply from a duration perspective, having intermission right after Climb Every Mountain may have been a bit unbalanced. Even if they took the opening scene from Act 2, where the children are playing the ball game with Elsa and their father comes and tells them he's getting married. Even if they put that scene later, as it is on stage, it might have still been a bit unbalanced. It might have made Act 2 a little too short. Whereas the lack of all those scenes I mentioned earlier on stage makes it a bit more even. The one other movie musical I can think of with an intermission is Thoroughly Mon Millie. And like Sound of Music, the scene before intermission is rather subdued. The other thing different about Sound of Music that I think affects the intermission is the sequence of events. In the film, the opening of Act 2 is when the children are playing a ball game with Elsa, and then their father shows up to tell them he's getting married, and then they sneak off to the Abbey. And after that is when Climb Every Mountain comes. That scene where their father comes up and tells them he's getting married is on stage. Them going to the Abbey is not. But that happens later chronologically because we've already had Climb Every Mountain. Having Act 1 end here, and this being the beginning of Act 2, indicates the passage of time. Even before we see Maria again, we can clearly see that she's been gone for a while. I think in the musical it specifies 3 days, but ultimately that doesn't matter on stage. The indication of the passage of time isn't quite as strong on stage as it is in the film, but the fact that Climb Every Mountain is such a powerful number makes up for that. And I do think that Climb Every Mountain is powerful in a way that none of the other songs in the show are. And actually, Rodgers and Hammerstein's original plan was to end Act 1 of the stage show with Maria leaving. And it might have worked. I think that would have worked better as the ending to Act 1 on stage than Climb Every Mountain would have worked as the ending to Act 1 on film. Even with movie musicals that had intermissions, they function slightly differently on film than they do on stage. Because you can kind of skip them. Obviously, if you are watching Sound of Music at a theatre, the intermission will function more or less the same way it does on stage. But if you're watching it at home, you're probably going to watch it all in one sitting. Even if you do take a break, it's probably not going to be the same as the 20-minute intermission of stage shows. You could cut the intermission from Sound of Music and the flow would be honestly exactly the same. Meaning the big emotional punch of Climb Every Mountain isn't as important as it is on stage. Or at least not important in the same way. On stage you know there's going to be an intermission. So if you continue on after Climb Every Mountain, it just falls flat. Because unless you've got something just as dramatic coming up and coming up soon, then there's no point to continue on. Having it be the end of Act 1 gives it more emotional punch because immediately after it you have time to relax and process it. You don't need to process things the same way when you're watching a film. Even though the scene is pretty much the same on both stage and film, they both certainly have a big emotional bang, but both the narrative and the medium it is being told in means it's okay to continue straight on. In the film, not only have we already had intermission, but we can also see that the children visiting the villa is kind of what prompted the Reverend Mother to talk to Maria. That doesn't happen on stage. It's still probably the biggest emotional punch you're going to get until the very end, but since the children tried to visit her, we know that there is a reason she needs to go back. Now no Maria has to return to the villa for reasons that aren't just her own. The musical was written because of Mary Martin, and so every other character is honestly pretty flat when compared to Maria. They are not horrible by any means, but everyone else got fleshed out in the movie. The only reason Max and Elsa don't feel like they've been more fleshed out is because their dynamic has changed. The narrative and the medium it is being told in means it's okay to continue straight on. And honestly, seeing that the children want her back, I think it's honestly more powerful than it being all about Maria. On stage, we can logically know that everyone else in the family wants her to return, but we don't get to see it in the same way we see on film. So while I think Rodgers and Hammerstein did make the right decision about changing the ending of Act 1 from Maria leaving to Climb Every Mountain, I think that Irma Sleeman absolutely made the right decision by changing it back to her leaving for the film. And that's everything I've got for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know, what is your favourite ending? Do you think changing it between the musical and the film was a good idea? Or do you think Climb Every Mountain should have been the final scene before the film's intermission? Do you think the stage musical could have worked if the ending had just been Maria leaving quietly? Stay safe, guys. Feel free to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in my video next time. So long, farewell!